This Data Poverty Lab Fellowship was undertaken by myself, Dr. Becky Parry, with Charlie Elliott from Affinity 2020. We worked with the young people from Affinity who are all care experienced. And we did work together for a period of 6 months. The project was funded by the Good Things Foundation and Nominate. And our aim overall was to understand how care experienced young people were impacted by data poverty, and particularly in relation to accessing new and creative and arts opportunities. The project took place in Rotherham, where preparations are being made to become the world's first children's capital of culture in 2025. And underlying this is a strategic aim for sector growth in the creative industries. Rotherham also has a very particular kind of set of circumstances in terms of its economy, and the 56.6% of children in Rotherham are described as living in the 30 most deprived areas nationally. So this really gives us an indication of a wider picture of where economic disadvantage can impact on young people in relation to data poverty. We used visual methods in working with the young people. We decided to do a really qualitative approach, and that included workshops with young people, making a podcast, and we also created the key findings that were the result of the project were then represented in a visual graphic, which you can access on the Good Things Foundation website, which summarises the main recommendations and the findings that the young people felt were the most important insights from the project. Just want to give a little bit of context in terms of data poverty. So the definition that we're using is a common one that is used by the Good Things Foundation, and it really highlights the fundamental nature of data poverty. So it's described as those individuals, households or communities who cannot afford sufficient private and secure mobile or broadband data to meet their essential needs. And essential needs is really a key point here. One of the other data poverty fellows found similarly that data poverty is something that impacts on really elemental aspects of life. So it's applying for jobs, accessing education, it's paying bills, it's doing your shopping, it's linking up with friends. It's really the basics. And arts and creativity are just one aspect of that are on a much bigger list. So it's a really, really fundamental issue, and it's particularly relevant to be talking about this in relation to care experienced young people who are just moving into that phase of their lives where they're becoming independent, moving into their own homes. So it's a really fundamental need. The other thing that I want to mention is that this was a small study, and we'd want to really acknowledge that. But there's clearly a much bigger picture, much bigger issue at stake here. So 1/4 of children and young people who participated in a Nominate Digital Youth Index 2022 survey said that they rely on out-of-home internet to connect to the internet, and they are this is something that is not just impacting on a small, very, very small group. This is a wider issue, and that kind of access to unreliable data. So where you're trying to capture a bit of data in order to be able to do something, say for school or for a work opportunity, is going to be causing much bigger inequity than, and it's important that we take this seriously as an issue. There are lots more details about the project in our blog that you can access on the Good Things Foundation website, but I'm going to move quite quickly into what are the key things that came out of our work with young people. And in particular, the key things that they said that they'd like to see in the future. So they were asking for a jargon-free guide to where to buy and access data. They also wanted to see provision of zero-rated websites. This wasn't something they were particularly familiar with. Through the course of the project, working with Charlie, they learnt about those sorts of services, and they really responded to that and felt that was a good idea, and particularly for things like in relation to health, in relation to education, that would be something that would make a big difference. So they wanted more zero-rated sites, particularly for public services. And they wanted more support in accessing affordable broadband at home and really understanding how to access that, and making sure that they were getting good deals and that they weren't penalised for their age, for their economic situation. So there are bigger structural issues at play here as well, and there are some solutions. And it's important that we acknowledge here the work that the Good Things Foundation and Nominet are doing in order to set up things like the National Data Bank, which enables organisations to sort of fulfil that final criteria of helping young people access affordable broadband. When we looked particularly at the issue of creativity and culture and the arts, it's really clear that data poverty puts young people at danger of missing out. We felt that by talking to them about some of the opportunities that were out there that they were missing out on, it could have been perceived that they were having that kind of this idea of FOMO, where they're in fear of missing out, and that this wider idea that we're all kind of wishing that we could be part of something exciting that's going on. It really struck us that actually these young people were in danger of missing out. So we felt we should kind of reframe and reclaim that term to highlight that actually, if we're going to put on creative and cultural offers to young people, we absolutely have to make sure that data isn't something that adds to the many other barriers that would stop them from participating. Data poverty is a major inhibitor for care experienced young people in terms of their everyday lives, all sorts of range of activities, but particularly the creative and cultural industries. And I'm now going to hand over to Charlie, who is going to talk about some of the ways that we might be able to consider this in our own work in the future.
I had the honour and privilege to have a conversation with Stephen Hawksworth. So Stephen Hawksworth is a special advisor to the board for Affinity 2020. He's also a senior social worker, a PhD student, and care experienced himself. And he also sits on many boards, including What Works Well in Social Care in an advisory capacity. So I spoke to Stephen about the importance of data in regards to his career trajectory and what he needed and how that helped him with his life. So the first question that I asked is, how important was data to you in being successful with your studies? Stephen pulled a really interesting point up. He said, having data allowed me through my A-levels and university to reach out to professionals and build a network. As a care experienced young person, your parents often do not have the contacts to help you develop your chosen career or profession. So by having that data, it allowed him to reach out beyond the local authority and his corporate parents. So he said, actually, it's crucial to your wider sense of belonging and career development to have that data, not just actually your studies. I also asked him, as a social worker, can you give me some examples as to how your own practice has changed to ensure that young people are not missing out in care, particularly around data? Again, he referred back to network. He said, I've created a network where I can ask the third sector, for example, for SIM cards, including data. I've even approached large organisations to see if they can support me in terms of finding solutions for our young people. Because he said, as we are now in a digital age, I hold the worries for my young people that how can they keep up with the rapid changes that are happening if they can't access data like their peers can. So in fact, they are moving further behind actually their peers. Affinity has developed a number of pilots, particularly one about culture and creative curriculum called Amplify. We run this after school for young people between the ages of 12 and 14 who are care experienced. The partnership is with Virtual Schools in Rotherham, so they are very forward thinking. And I asked him, what are your thoughts around cultural and creative offers, and what is his experience? And he said, we must use documents like language that cares. He said that must be central when we're advertising offers. Language is so important to our young people. We must be mindful of asking for long applications for bursaries. Many of our young people can become very overwhelmed with these long applications. There's only 10% of care experienced young people hold English and maths at the related age expectations. And he also said that one of the things that sometimes people miss out on is co-production is really important. He said, asking our young people what it is they'd like to learn about in the cultural and creative sectors. How can these offers be marketed so actually they reach these young people? What support is needed locally to access these models? He said it's also massively important to build these programs, to have next steps, the exit strategy, because once you've built those relationships with those young people, if it's a short-term program, say of 6 weeks, then what's going to happen after that? Otherwise, they're going to feel like people are just coming in and out of their lives, which is what they experience quite a lot at the moment.